Episode 20, Forgiveness Part 2. Never thought on the first one that this would be one of the most difficult episodes I've done on here. It's really hard for me to put what I'm thinking into terms that make sense for everybody. One of the things I've been trying to discuss here is the idea that my brain wants to categorize things. I want to be able to separate things into saying, this is forgivable, and this other side is not forgivable. But I know there's a lot of space in the middle where it's more so up to me, and I would like to try to forgive in that middle ground. But there's also stuff that I'm like, I feel like there's a limit to it. So it's really hard to wrap my head around, and it's really hard to put into words, sort of present. Uh, I'm trying to be as open minded as I can to it. But I think there's a lot of room for debate. As far as like society's concerned, I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be discussed. And I think people have their own ideologies for it. I think people have their own categories where they say this is fine, this is not fine. And then it's like we don't talk about the middle. We don't talk about where those lines are drawn. We just talk about one extreme situation. We say that's not okay. And then it's like, well, when did it become not okay? We need to know where that is because there should be laws in place right on those lines, and we should know how to look for that. Should be defenders of that space. Let's take an extreme example. Let's talk about like somebody hitting their wife in public. For me, that's a unforgivable space, but it's an unforgivable space that I don't think is condemning for eternity. I think there's something going on that needs to be looked into there. It's like it's a space where I think that would be middle ground for me of I would like to forgive somebody, but generally all of that is just kind of clumped in one side that I would say it's too hard for me to forgive, at least right now. Maybe a day will come when I'm a little bit more open-minded to that, but I feel like it's just it's difficult for me right now to forgive people for intentional actions, negative things. A good example case that I was going to bring up too is a kid spilling something on a carpet. Maybe it's just water, that makes it so much easier. A kid spills water on carpet. It's like, oh well, not a big deal. It's easy to forgive. But if the kid then stares you down the second time and just does it intentionally, you're like, okay, now it's crossing boundaries. Now you're doing it just to get back at me. Now you're doing it to be mad. So I feel like when something like that happens, it's done with intention. When a mistake is made, it's something that does not have intent behind it. I think that's a lot easier to forgive. You know, this thing happened, but whoever made it happen did not intend for that to happen. I think there's a very nice space of forgiveness there. And there might be outliers. I'm very curious to hear the outliers if there are some. And if people come up with any, yeah, feel free to put it in the comments. I'd love to discuss a little further on that. But when you look at the other side, when somebody does something negative and, by means of hurting somebody or hurting someone's stuff, you know, when they do that intentionally, that goes on the other side of it. That becomes an unforgivable space. And I think one of the ways to get through that space to become forgivable again is by taking the journey of understanding, by taking the journey of, I guess, forgiveness. I guess in Christian context, there's a road to Damascus. That's a discussion of forgiveness of self almost. Sort of a re envisioning of self, and there's a whole bunch of stuff we could dig into there, but I just wanted to cite it for people that are a little bit more interested to dig in. Anyways, I feel like it's not cut and dry. It's not like here's a boundary exactly where something becomes no longer forgivable, but we know where the extremes are. If we go way past there, we can find stuff where we're like, yeah, this is totally outside of bounds. I think specifically when people have no intent to change. But again, then you think about that same scenario, you put it with like, a kid dumping water on the ground. Like if you dump water on the ground and then you dump water on the ground again and then again and then again, it just becomes like, what are you doing? Like now you got to look into some type of therapy. Why is this kid dumping water on the ground? And I still think that's part of the hero's redemption sort of thing. It's part of the hero's journey. Realizing why you're intending to do something wrong, what your actions are causing, understanding the whole thing. And if you don't take that journey, you are not forgivable. It's hard to make a blanket statement that covers all aspects of forgiveness as a whole. I think it's important to understand the attempt at doing that because we start to see just how vast it is. We start to see just how many things are in there. But yeah, there's certain subtleties where I'm like, I wonder if certain cases would fall one way or another. I wonder if something that would be non-intentional could be unforgivable. And it's like, well, maybe. Really hard to think of that though. And, vice versa. Maybe there's something that somebody intends to do negative and then that becomes totally forgivable. Like maybe saying something mean. I think that's something. But again, people understand what feelings are and then they think, once I cool down, oh yeah, shouldn't have said that. That was dumb. And then it becomes okay, you still took that journey to forgiveness. You still took that journey to understand what you were doing, how that affected people. So I think we almost got it. I think that's roughly sort of a blanket design of forgiveness and how it works. Really interesting, though. There's a lot of little cases there where I'm like, think of one thing or I think of another thing, and then would that work? Could you run it through that same sort of business model and say, does it function the same? Going to have the same outcome? But yeah, there are things, specifically like the idea of consequence. If somebody does something, there are consequences regardless. And you could go as small as saying, yeah, the kid's spilling water on the ground, maybe he's got to clean it up. Fair game, right? And then that helps go through that hero's journey is facing those consequences. But when you think about something harsher, like somebody, committing a felony and ending up in prison, are they still given that opportunity for forgiveness? Do they go through a hero's journey to learn what they did wrong? Do they understand it fully? Is there even a program for understanding? Like, do they bother with that, or they just throw them in a cell and lock them up for a year, and then let's see how it goes. Maybe they'll be happy when they come out. What? What a weird system. But I hope that there is, I don't know, more of that, more of the forgiveness part of it. I think they do that in other countries. I think I've heard about that in other countries where they try to build somebody up and they try to find out the cause of what made you do this. It's such a weird space. Like, I don't know. I feel like the American model for this is a little bit broken. I feel like we could do better on a lot of things, but specifically on forgiveness. Maybe we need better systems to teach people. Maybe that would help everybody. Maybe everybody should go through a little bit of that. Maybe we need some classes in school to be like, here's how you go through this. Here's why you go through this. Here's how you understand both sides. Here's how you should approach these situations. Maybe you'll have better parents, you know? Maybe we'll have better parents that know how to teach their kids better because they took the time to think, oh, here's how I can think about things I go through in life. Here's how I can be better about forgiveness. Man, what a crazy world. Imagine how much improvement we could make on little systems like this. But we just don't have them. We don't have them. I don't know why. We don't have that stuff. There's a lot of stuff missing, and you don't really find it until you start digging into these topics. And then all of a sudden, this whole answer comes to you, and you're like, this would be really helpful for everyone to understand. It doesn't have to be like a 6-hour class, but maybe it could be something everybody discusses at some point. How do we forgive? It would make better relationships between parents and kids, make better community members. It'd make better bosses, better employees. I mean, come on. Just it's building cohesive systems, making sure that we have tolerance for one another. Right now, we're a country of very limited tolerance because we've been so divided. We've been set up recently to villainize one side or another, and they sort of put everything in no forgiveness piles. And they don't want the hero's journey. They don't want someone to go through it and realize that they're wrong about something. They just want people to say, you're this side or that side, and both sides unforgivable. Everybody's unforgivable. And you start seeing that. You start seeing people that are changing their mind about certain things on one side or another. And as soon as they say, you know what, I actually do agree with this other side a little bit, it's like the other side attacks them for it. Yeah, that's what happens because you're stupid. They don't like accept them. They don't bring them in and say, yeah, here's some other stuff that we'd like to talk to you about. Here's some other areas that I think we've all been disagreeing on. And it's only a couple of things. When you really get down to it, it's like, man, we have so limited of things that we're disagreeing on. And the majority of it is it's pretty much been the same. It's like, it's we want to have a life that we're happy about. We want to have a legacy that we're proud of. We want to build a country that's better for everybody. And everyone keeps thinking that that's different. And I'm like, well, your best country is pretty similar to my best country. We should be able to start our own businesses, you know? Shouldn't be people telling us what to do all the time. There's like certain freedoms that we just want to have. The freedom to discuss things. Holy cow. That's starting to be an issue. People are like, I can't discuss things anymore. That's one of the reasons I'm like, we got to get this podcast out there. Just so it's like, here's some discussion points. Here's things we used to be able to do. It's terrifying. Imagine a world where we can't make podcasts about what we're thinking. Jeez. And it's already in situations where I have to be very cautious of certain things. Certain topics are really touchy right now. People are scared of them. And I'll talk about any of them. I'm open to it. But a lot of the stuff I can't put on here because the platforms will attack you for it. It's not the people, it's the corporations. Somebody's always coming for you. That is unforgivable in a comic sense, but no, it really needs to be something understood. For a corporation to do something malicious with intent to do something malicious, I think it's a little bit easier to shovel that into the unforgivable side because the entire corporation can never take that hero's journey. The people in the corporation could, but the corporation just kind of as a whole is its own entity. I don't think there's a way for an entire group entity to take that journey the same. I don't know. Maybe we've seen it. Maybe we've seen a shift like that somewhere in society and we haven't noted it. But for an entire group of people to sort of change and forgive, I mean, I'm like leaning toward the Native Americans. I'm like, did they have a situation where they sort of had to shift and change their mindset, learned forgiveness, or was that forced on them? You know, a lot of spaces like that where I'm like, I don't know how we'd navigate that just as a talking point. You know, it's a lot of stuff. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be back and forth, people bringing up points and arguing, and a lot of stuff that I can't do as one person. Boy, that's kind of neat. We're making a podcast for other podcasters. You can come here to get ideas and then go debate it. Perfect. But that's kind of what it's about. It's about getting ideas going, giving people the space to think about what they really want, what they really want to say, what stuff they want to put out there. You got to start doing that. You got to take the time because until it's all mapped out, we really don't have the answer for it. Until next time.